So the DNC, Mayor Pete Buttigieg, CNN, they're all together in this thing. When Pete Buttigieg took stage tonight for the New Hampshire CNN town hall, they announced instantly right when he got on stage, hey, look, Pete Buttigieg, we finally have the results for the Iowa caucus. So here are the unproven results that they still decided to post. Right when Pete Buttigieg took stage, which was right after Bernie Sanders. So it's obviously coordinated. It's disgusting. But since there's so many errors in the data, the Bernie Sanders campaign, they have their own records of what happened. So they released a list of them to combat this. And as we know, Tom Perez called for a recount today, a recanvass of Iowa. So now the Bernie Sanders campaign is declaring victory, saying that since the final results only had Mayor Pete winning by about 1.5 state delegates, if you look at the discrepancies the Sanders campaign provides, then you'll see that Bernie Sanders actually won. So now they're going to consider this. Hopefully. CNN knew that these numbers were fraudulent. And they still reported it because obviously they care more about clicks and views than they care about actual integrity. And we know that they work with the DNC on many things and corrupt campaigns on many things. And that's very apparent when you look back to the Elizabeth Warren situation, when they tried framing Bernie Sanders as a sexist. If you remember, a CNN reporter broke that story the day before a CNN debate, and then the CNN host, in cahoots with the Des Moines Register, set up that moment during the debates with CNN, with Warren and everything, to make Sanders look like a sexist when they asked that infamous question. That's a good question. If Bernie does win a majority and goes into the convention with a majority of delegates, will they try to overturn this? And I think the question lies on another question. Will they decide to let the Democratic Party fracture? Because if they did that, if Bernie Sanders clearly had the most delegates by like 400, 500, and they decided to screw him out of this, then the Democratic Party is completely over. There's going to be a new party. And after that, you have this whole right party, this whole right-wing party, which is going to be huge. The fascist party with Donald Trump going far right. And then you would have a divided left. You'd have the Democrats, and then you'd have a progressive party, which would have to function as like a caucus and caucus together, kind of like how Bernie does now with the Democrats. But as far as fundraising and influence, if they stole this from Bernie at the very end, then they're basically done. And it's going to get really scary leading up to it. But the only way to really fight that is to win by so much that they can't refute it. Win by so much that, it's without question. So enough people get pissed off about it, go and march on the DNC in Wisconsin and make sure they change their results. Make sure Bernie wins it. Like, it kind of sucks too. How this small dollar donations, grassroots funded campaign, well, not small campaign, but it's not small. It's a huge function of, working class people together. How this candidate has to use his resources to ensure that this process is fair. Like, we're lucky he has such good organization, because if he had the organization the DNC had, they'd be done. I mean, Bernie would be done. But now, imagine if the DNC had the organization Bernie Sanders does. Because you're looking at this right here. They've been trying to screw Bernie over in Iowa the whole week. The DNC had no idea the Bernie Sanders campaign kept their own results. And now when they try to pull this move, where they say, okay, we're going to announce a victor tomorrow no matter what, unless if a candidate challenges, they have everything ready. Which is pretty masterful, if you ask me. Like, I'm very proud to be a contributor to this campaign, because it's obviously the most well-organized. Especially with how they got the satellite caucuses all set up. And that's what pretty much brought them the win at the end. And that's why Tom Perez wanted to recanvass everything, because Buttigieg's campaign got mad about how the satellite caucuses were being counted. No, so they released 100% of the results, but they don't care about what the actual numbers are. They basically said, okay, we have the 100% of the results. Right when Mayor Pete took stage at this CNN town hall, Mayor Pete took stage, and at that exact moment, they released the final results that they had. The Iowa Democratic Party, right when Bernie Sanders left stage, right when Mayor Pete took stage. But they reported it as if Pete was the winner, because they wanted to give him this whole week positive media coverage. And now we figure out that the data they gave is fraudulent. They said that upon arrival. But of course, as it says here, CNN doesn't care that the data was bad, and no news company cares about that. Everyone's declaring Mayor Pete the victor when the data isn't corrected yet from the mistakes that they made. So now Bernie Sanders' campaign is using their own internal data collection to ensure that whatever happens tomorrow, when they consider recanvassing it, it goes out in their favor and what the actual vote says. So Tom Perez said today he wanted to freaking recanvass, which would just count all the votes again. But then they came out again and said after that, like, okay, by tomorrow, the candidates have to decide if they individually want to ask for a recanvass. Of course, the media will use Bernie's campaign to challenge and drive the narrative that Bernie is questioning the legitimacy of the results in our electoral system. Well, luckily, Joe Biden was the first one to come out and say the Iowa caucus results were fake. So I think that helps our case a lot. Joe Biden came out and was like, oh, I don't think I could trust these records because they were collected in a bad way because I finished with 10% of the vote. So that was Joe Biden's whole philosophy with that. So if they don't consider this and take it, then I think Bernie Sanders' campaign will keep on growing. I think the media underestimates how much information people can actually get without them. Like, there's not a media bubble anymore. People have the internet, people have communications devices. Like, I could go on Twitter and get better coverage of events and more factually correct coverage than MSM will give me. And they're not the only guardians of the news anymore. So since we could go right past them and, get information from somewhere else, they have less control over us. And when they do something blatantly corrupt and they lie like this, we can more easily point that out, which is a great thing. So Bernie Sanders' campaign, their data is very accurate, because when all the precinct leaders reported their numbers originally on Twitter, because no communications devices were working, and those numbers didn't line up with what the Iowa Democratic Party put out at the end, Bernie Sanders' numbers, the numbers he got and his campaign tracked, lined up with what the precinct managers' numbers did. So it really exploited how the Iowa Democratic Party was showing fraudulent information. Yeah, they still have a bubble of people, and I think that's literally all the people, like in the media, all the moderates that are voting for Klobuchar, Warren, Biden, and Buttigieg. Those are the people stuck within the modern, or not the modern, the MSM, mainstream media. It's all the people who come back from work, like a typical, mom or dad or whatever, sits on the couch, puts on CNN, puts on MSNBC, and that's the only news they really get for the week. Because other than that, they're not going to see anything that's truthful. So it's a really interesting thing we have going on here. And on Facebook, CNN, MSNBC, Fox News, they have been able to use Facebook's policies to create absolute echo chambers on there as well. So our free internet is really important, and that's why I'm against like Elizabeth Warren's policies against disinformation and other stuff that could potentially take away from our freedoms. Luckily, though, Bernie Sanders' campaign knows what they're doing. And this gives me really good hope for if Bernie Sanders is the eventual nominee. Because he has this organization on the ground. And someone just said something in the chat right now that we have to prepare for the Bernie Sanders socialist smears. And that's where the ground game comes in. We need to get on the ground and talk straight to people, tell them what he's actually about. When we break it down into, like we give an example of the grocery store, we have to keep on giving this example for the socialism smear. So that one grocery store in like, I think it's like South Carolina or Georgia. So a small town, a very conservative town, ran out of grocery stores. The last for-profit, corporate-owned grocery store left because it wasn't profitable. So there was no way for people in the town to get milk or anything. So the people said, okay, we have two options. We could either pay for a company to come in and have them take profits from us and also provide us a service. We could pay them to steal from us with profits, or we can make our own grocery store. And if we could show that video around, I could try to find it then. We could show them the idea that why would we pay a company to do something that people can do? Because when we pay a company to do it, it's automatically leaking money from our system. It's a waste of money. And that's another argument for Medicare for All. Private insurance companies literally serve no purpose. Like, they just steal from the overall system. Yeah, like socialism, it only works for a core base of people. Like, it doesn't mean the same thing to this generation as it does in this generation of people who are politically attentive as it does before. Like, the numbers of people who are Biden supporters who view socialism as more favorable than capitalism. We have to that's why the whole model is, okay, Donald Trump's terrible, so everyone who's a Democrat will vote against Donald Trump. Plus, Bernie Sanders has populist appeal for centrists and some like moderate Republicans even. He has that appeal. And then after that, we have that cut down the middle where people are going to vote against Trump, people are going to vote for Trump. But we have to compete with Trump on the turnout game, because that's how Trump can beat us in PA, Michigan, and Ohio, is the turnout game. And that's where we really need to make up ground there. That's the whole theory of our electability case. Yeah, Bernie's starting to eat into Biden's older base. He gets a lot of white working class voters. I actually just got my my PAP to get a Bernie sign up. I'm in PA, and I mean, all you gotta do is tell people what it really is. Break them away from the media, whoever you can. Like, some people are too far gone, but break them away from the media. Bring it down to that human level. Gen Xer, but generations that came before me are more open to socialism, and that's great. Yeah, I don't say the word socialism. Like, when people say, like, oh, you support a socialist, I always slow it down, and I say, all right, so if we continue this conversation, we're not going to use any labels. So don't say capitalism, don't say socialism, don't say Democrat, don't say Republican. We're going to talk about exactly what it is that we're talking about. We're not going to use labels, because labels take meanings that don't mean what they should mean. So we're just going to talk about what socialism is, and it's everybody, government for the people, by the people, and break it down for people, and then wrap it around and say, okay, that's what I mean by socialism. That's what typically works for me. Burners on Instagram. Yeah, dude. Honestly, the biggest strength of Bernie Sanders' electability case are the immense population of memers. Like, memes won 2016 for Trump. I don't know if people really realize that. But, I mean, if we knew how to use memes more effectively, then I'm telling you, Trump is done. Facebook memes. Like, Trump has excellent control of what the crowd wants on Facebook. He knew what to do online, so it would be shared in clips. And Bernie has that ability. Yeah, all this stuff is merely, all these things are merely labels. The policies, like, they make sense. And all you got to say, too, and by the way, anyone watching this who is not subscribed, if there is anyone that isn't subscribed, please consider doing so. But all you got to say for healthcare is, like, okay, number one, are we the richest country in the world? Like, okay, yeah. Are we the most powerful country in the world? Yes. Are other countries, poorer? Do they have, less powerful or less power? And if the answer to all those questions is yes, then you move on. Like, okay, do all these countries provide universal health care? And they say yeah, and then we'll say, okay, can the U.S. do it? And if their argument is we can't pay for it, that works for that. Because you say we're the richest, but apparently we can't pull off the same system that, freaking Canada does, or whatever, or Australia, whatever model you prefer. So I think that works to a decent amount. Yeah, socialism is social ownership, things that everyone buys into, and it makes sense because, no for-profit motive is taking money away from us. If the people can do it, the people should be doing it. The only place where capitalism makes sense is if an owner could improve on something that we're doing, improve on production. Like, that's the only way monopolies make sense. You're at 74. I will get her to vote for Bernie. That's great. Yeah, that's good. And that's a part of it too. Like, whoever you know, friends, family, anyone who is going to vote, show them show them the video of the one that Matt Orfila or whatever made, that 5 minute long video showing Bernie Sanders getting speared by the media, and then with a video right after that to correct the smear. That video is very effective in getting people on Bernie's side, because and if people sit down and watch the Joe Rogan interview, people love that. They see the real side of Bernie. If people get a chance to dissect Bernie without the filter of media, they love him. You think she likes Warren? It's really hard for an older woman to not want to vote for another woman because they want to see a woman president. But I mean, I can argue that Bernie Sanders getting elected will make us, a step closer to getting a woman president. And we learned from Hillary, we don't want to have a bunch of weaker women candidates lose, come in and get rinsed out, especially in a time like this. I don't think that looks good for history, for our country to keep denying that leadership before we can fix the ship, make it go the right direction. She was anti-Bernie before. Now I think she's more neutral. How did you do it, Rockley? How did you fix her to be more Bernie friendly? I'm very curious how you do this because I have a couple methods, and some of them are showing videos. We could break down what socialism actually means. If people do bring it up, you could bring up his consistency. If it's a person who identifies as a minority, whether it be racially or gender, you could bring up how he fought for their rights before it was popular, like gay rights. Hillary Clinton didn't believe in gay rights until like 2013 or something like that. Bernie Sanders believed in it before, like way before it was popular. He's willing to do things that do not make sense within the social circle he's in, which is very good. Because if you do things other than just what is within your social circle, then that means when a private interest comes up to you, you won't care. And we know Bernie Sanders is stingy like that. He's the good type of stingy in his beliefs. One thing we do need to come up with an argument for, I think, is if you bring up an old video of Bernie talking about different countries that attempt socialism, because I think those videos do play well to go against Bernie. So if Bernie's speaking, like they always use the stupid Soviet Union smear, where he's like honeymooning there. I know that's fake. His wife, they were on like some type of like relationship building experience to try to understand the people over there to help relations. But there are a couple other instances where people might question it. So they could say, oh, he supports this government. So does he want to do that here or whatever? It is an argument they're going to use as well. Another argument I usually use is like when you look at... Oh, I just lost it actually. But yeah. I really forget what I was about to say. It was a good argument for Bernie too. You could tell the difference between libertarianism and authoritarianism. That's a good one. So like usually when you're in like a civics class in high school or anyone that learns about politics in general, you are taught instantly there's a left and a right. So they show you a political grid, left and right, but they don't really tackle the issues that there is a libertarianism and a authoritarianism extreme to everything. So libertarian capitalism is always good. Libertarian socialism is always good. Authoritarian anything is bad. So when states fail, it's because they're authoritarian, not because they're free. Nothing fails because it's too free of a state, unless there are some situations where there are not enough guidelines. Obviously, an economic failure happens, but yeah, social programs are not an economic system where the state owns the means of productions. We just want our tax dollars to pay for stuff that actually benefits us. That's a good argument too. Less wars, more food for our people. We want to have less people dying overseas, and we want to save more people dying here that don't have health care. And, I think that's a very good argument as well. Yeah, and one thing I get from people is that Bernie's grumpy. I mean, I usually say like, okay, he is grumpy, but he's grumpy for a reason. Like that's how you know he's genuinely pissed off. He is genuinely mad. Like when he talks about income inequality, when he talks about rich people exploiting the poor, he generally like has experienced stuff like that. Coming from an actual lower income family, and now he's pissed off about it and wants it to change. And that's more authenticity than he can get from anyone else, especially Pete Buttigieg. Holy crap. If you hear Pete Buttigieg speak and you think it's authentic, like, oh my, the way he talks, like a president from a movie constructed by a robotic system and automation, if we really restore the hope of our nation, you have to, it's the way he speaks. Our government is owned by the people. Donald Trump. We have to prepare for the day after Donald Trump is elected. Like, I can't stand politicians that speak like that. Bernie has the unique ability when he's speaking to sound like he's talking to you. Unless if he goes into that civil rights leader mode where he gets really like, it's dramified. He sounds great when he goes into that. It's actually some of his best. But he knows how to tell it straight to you. Yeah, a lot of people are calling Bernie supporters similar to Trump supporters. I even had a college professor tell me that Bernie supporters were in a cult, that we are all cultish. And I'm like, dude, the reason people that support Bernie are radicalized is because they see the media literally lying. We see the corporations lying and distorting the truth and manipulating people we know that are suffering under systemic issues but can't see that because the system is controlling them. Like, that's the reason we get mad. That's the reason people are so stuck with Bernie. But they're going to call Bernie supporters a cult and say they're just like Trump supporters. You see it as follows. If you can say anything is a social program, or something is a social program, that should be managed in a social way. Yeah, the state is the only way normal people can orchestrate power at all. That is another truth. Like, the state is our vehicle for change. The state's intention is to protect us from, like the shadow government was a big topic in the American Revolution. If you read any literature about the American Revolution, people and farmers, we have an agrarian culture where farmers were basically socialists who shared land and made sure everyone benefited and had equitable opportunities. And they didn't like the government. Well, they didn't like the shadow government. They liked the government because the government was strong and worked for the people, but it got overtaken by the shadow government, which is the private entities and rich. So they had to, that's one of the drivers of the American Revolution. And whenever we have a farmers' protest throughout history, I forget what that one's called, where they set fire to the. But yeah, we have a strong union tradition in a lot of these places in PA and Michigan, in Ohio, Wisconsin. We have to reawake the union. We have a lot of old Dems that are like, they voted Trump. They kind of forgot the spirit of the union. We got to find a way to bring that back as well. Bernie stands behind every word he says. Authenticity at its finest. He is an adorable figure. Even if you don't agree with him, you always hear people say, oh, he's authentic. So that's what we want. Yeah, it's a movement. Like, oh my goodness, when people tell me to vote for Michael Bloomberg if he's the nominee, I'm like, oh my, if the Democratic Party moves so far to the right that we elect Michael Bloomberg, the next Republican president is literally going to be Hitler. Like, it's not even a joke. Like, if we elect a straight oligarch, then, and what's his face? Who's that guy on MSNBC? Jason Johnson. This guy is a freaking college professor. This guy talks to kids in college, young adults my age in college, and he's spewing this garbage to them. Where is it? Good thing he posts on Twitter so much. And he's talking about Michael Bloomberg. He's a big Bloomberg guy. They all are. They're probably making money from him. But he had that one post. Um, Jesus, I'm just gonna search up. What's his name? Jason Johnson. I might have retweeted it actually. Yeah, but he called Bernie Sanders a freaking oligarch and put him in the cover. Oh my God. How dumb do you have to be? This guy is a college professor, and he put Bernie Sanders in this group of oligarchs because of his interaction with Nina Turner on MSNBC, where she called Bloomberg an oligarch, and he got all offended and started to defend his billionaire friend Michael Bloomberg, and he puts Bernie Sanders in the middle of this list. And a big distinction from Bernie Sanders, from the rest of these people, they say he's a rich politician, therefore he's an oligarch. Bernie Sanders is not rich. To working class people, he's rich. But Michael Bloomberg, $60 billion. If you take Bernie Sanders' net worth, and if you take 60 billion and divide it by 2.5 million, so I can do the math right now. I have a calculator. 60,000 million billion divided by 24 million. So Michael Bloomberg literally has 25,000 times Bernie Sanders' net worth. And they're saying Bernie Sanders is rich, but they don't understand that when we say rich, we don't just mean you could buy material possessions. We mean when you're rich enough to manipulate entire economic, social, and governmental systems. That's what we mean by rich. We don't mean that you could own more than one house or you could buy a nice car. We mean you have enough money to literally buy your way into an election like Michael Bloomberg did. Buy your way onto the debate stage to relevancy. Rockley, there are upper middle class people that are worth more than Bernie. Yeah, it's net worth. It's not what you make per year. Net worth accumulates, and he made money from a book, and he was also in Congress and Senate for like 30 years. He's one of the poorest people to be in that long. It's crazy. And this guy, he defended him so passionately. I have never seen this guy speak about the working class in any type of, reciprocal or in any type of similar energy as he defended Michael Bloomberg here. Yeah, a lot of people around myself don't understand that Donald Trump is good for Democrats because it keeps them in power and it keeps like donations flowing into Democrats because everyone's like, oh, resist, we have to be against Trump so that the Democratic Party grows larger, more people are in it, more money, more profit in it for the people ruling the party. And I don't think a lot of people realize that. Hopefully their eyes will be opened. But you could show them a situation like what's happening in Iowa right now, and they'll tell me Tom Perez should still remain, head of the DNC, which is absolutely, oh my goodness, terrible. Millionaires aren't oligarchs by definition. Yeah, you have to have enough money where you could you could say I'm running for president and put 50 million in your campaign without, Yeah, you have to have at least 100 millions, but I remember seeing you have to put it in perspective if Michael Bloomberg spends $1 billion on his presidential campaign, it's the equivalent to somebody who makes like $60,000 a year spending like a couple $100 on it. Yeah, there's a big difference between the two. I want to debate Jason Johnson. If I could debate any of these people, where did he go? Did he go to like UNC or something? I think he went to UNC. But come on, dude, you can't be that dumb. And I know he's not that dumb. He's completely corrupted. But it hurts me. And he teaches kids. He teaches college kids. Like, this is what Republicans mean when they say that people are getting brainwashed by college professors. They mean Jason Johnson. He teaches at Howard. And did he go to UNC? I think he went to UNC. Now the CNN town hall, they used it to screw over Bernie. So this is a quote Pete Buttigieg decided to use from his town hall as a profound statement. The shape of our democracy is the issue that... This is good. That's good. That's some good stuff, dude. That inspired me. I'm going to go to PeteButtigieg.com and donate $1 to his campaign because he really inspired me here. The shape of our democracy is the issue that affects every other issue. Wow, genius. I did not know our democracy and our government mattered. Mr., screw over Bernie in Iowa, get polls canceled, crowdfund a shady app with your friggin' establishment friends. And the thing he uses to be like, oh, I'm not like that. I'm not crooked. The thing he uses is like, I'm the poorest guy up here. I haven't made money. Like, come on, dude. Just because you haven't made money doesn't mean you aren't corrupt. That means you're more friggin' likely to be corrupted, in all honesty. I know they use that argument for Michael Bloomberg. Like, oh, he can't, end Trump. Like, oh, he funds his own campaign. He can't be corrupted. But it is true. If you are poorer, there's more of a chance you'll get corrupted because then you are really power hungry at that point. Actually, there might not be that much of a friggin' correlation. Because Bernie Sanders is an exception, obviously, in many ways. I'll start a super PAC called Dem Socialist for Trump. Oh my god, that'd be a good idea. I mean, a lot of Democratic Socialists will vote for him, I bet, out of friggin' protest. Bernie bros. Bernie bros are the reason we lose.
That President Trump was mocking the idea that some people could be using faith to guide their politics. He said about Mitt Romney, he used his faith as a crutch. Response.
A crutch? Ooh, I didn't know he said that.
Where do we begin? I mean, especially for a president who tries to cloak himself in religion and tell believers that they somehow
this is the only issue I like him on.
Have to vote Republican. I mean, I guess he just has a very different take on faith than I do. Because
the only reason...
I'm pretty sure that there's a whole lot of scripture.
The only reason I like Buttigieg on this issue is because he's the only person that'll get up on stage and say, like, it doesn't land at all, but he'll say, like, your religion argument is BS. Trump doesn't follow religion at all. Because that's probably the part that perplexes me most about Trump supporters, is the people who are, like, super religious, and they're like, oh, Trump is walking God. Trump is the embodiment of God. He's the second coming. And I'm like, come on. Like, you could pretend before you had morals, and that's why you had religious morals and ideologies that made you religious, but now I know it's just a friggin' a clown costume. Yeah, that's true. But, like, I don't know if here's a great answer.
How do you
Bernie
think
Sanders
your Jewish heritage impacts your vision of the world and politics? And do you think it is a help or a hindrance
this is Bernie
to
Sanders'
your role
true,
as a
like,
candidate?
It impacts me very profoundly.
Attribute.
When I try to think about how I came to the views
one.
that I hold, there are two major factors, I think. Although one never knows, but I think there are two factors.
By the way.
Number one, I grew up in a family, didn't have a whole lot of money, and we struggled economically, and that made me aware that there are tens of millions of people who are in that same boat. And the second one is being Jewish. And I remember as a kid looking at these big picture books of World War II, and tears would roll down my cheeks when I saw what happened to the Jewish people. 6 million people were killed by Hitler. And, I think at a very early age, even before my political thoughts were developed, I was aware of the horrible things that human beings can do to other people in the name of racism or white nationalism, or in this case, Nazism. And in the community that I lived in, there were people, you go downtown in your shop, people who had their tattoos from the concentration camps on their arm. A few years ago, my wife and I and my brother and his wife went back to the town in Poland where my father was born. And we were shown, people that were very, very nice, and we were shown an area where the Nazis had put in some 300 people and just mowed them down in a ditch. So that had how horrible people can be to other people in the names of racial superiority or etc. Certainly has been with me for my entire life. And that is why I will do everything I can to end the kind of divisiveness that Trump is fomenting in this country. We are one people, and I don't care if you're black, you're white, you're Latino, Native American, Asian American, you're gay, you're straight. That's not what it's about. What it's about is that we are human beings and we share common dreams and aspirations. Mm-hmm. So, the pain that my family, my father's family suffered in Poland is something that has impacted my life, absolutely.
And that's his main attribute. He brings out that common human struggle, that same message that Dr. King pushed forward. Like Bernie Sanders almost plagiarizes some Martin Luther King speeches from the Poor People's Movement, the speeches MLK gave to white and black working class voters. I almost had that moment. Remember when Joe Biden said, he said something like, he said poor kids are just as good as white kids. Is that what he said? Joe Biden said that by accident. Freudian slip. I hate when Pete Buttigieg says he's a grassroots guy. No, Israel actually hates Bernie Sanders because he's not religion Jewish. He's just ethnically Jewish, which Ben Shapiro just said he doesn't consider Bernie Sanders a real Jew. Yeah, but by the way, someone else just subscribed. Dude, only 63 subscribers away from 1,000. That is crazy. I'll tell you what. This last month has been crazy with that stuff. This is what freaking Ben Shapiro said today. To accomplish the policy goals Bernie Sanders is talking about, what you usually have to do is kill a few people. All right, so I want to hear about any instance in Germany and freaking UK and Canada and Australia, New Zealand, where they had to kill people to get normal, socially democratic policies across. And it's not even socially democratic. That's what we consider it here. In other countries, it's normal.
And he didn't end up lowering poverty in the United States.
Stupid.
The percentage of people living below the poverty line right now is effectively the same as it was since the beginning of the 70s. So the notion that Bernie Sanders is going to come along with government and that he's going to fix all problems, basically his plan goes like this. Declare that socialism is insert thing you want, ? Utopia. That's Bernie Sanders'
good
program.
ratio.
And here's the thing. Once he has to fill in those gaps, as it turns out, to achieve equality of outcome, what you usually have to do is kill a few people. I mean, this is what communism does. It says in order to achieve equality of outcome, we're going to have to seize the property of a few people. If they don't like it, then we're going to have to imprison them. We're going to have to restrict them from moving. We're going to have to crack down on individual rights. We're going to have to redistribute everything. Eventually, what we're really going to need to do is just collectivize the ownership, make it government-owned so we can redistribute the proceeds. We're going to need to do that at the very least. Okay, that ends up pretty ugly. And this is why when Elizabeth Warren tried to fill in the gaps on Bernie Sanders, on even basic things that he's proposing, like Medicare for all, she got destroyed. Because Bernie will say Medicare for all, and people will say, so what's your plan for this, and what does it look like? And Bernie will just say things like, well, it will cost you less. Well, no, it won't. But he doesn't ever actually roll out his plan. Right? He'll just promise you the moon, and then when you say, okay, how are you going to get to the moon? And he just refuses to answer the question, then this is a sign of genius.
I think we also have to start saying when he talks socialism, yeah, that's completely right. Totalitarianism, the Marshall Plan. Like, when we say socialism, we have to make a distinction between authoritarianism and libertarianism. Like Gary Johnson, libertarian, somewhat famously said that Bernie Sanders and him agree on 73% of the issues because Bernie Sanders is half libertarian, but economically he believes that, we talk about different kinds of freedom economically. There's positive freedom and there's negative freedom. So when we talk positive freedom, it's freedom that the government gives to people. Negative freedom is freedom from government. So Bernie Sanders believes in negative freedom for social issues, but positive freedom for economic issues, because he believes if you free up economic issues with the government by the people, then the social issues will be able to live peacefully without government intervention. So that's a good distinction we have to bring there. We have to make it less wordy than that, though. Let's just say, Bernie Freedom Corporation bad. We'll show him a list of the pharmaceutical companies that caused many deaths in the opioid epidemic, and they made $2 billion off it and only had to pay back $500,000 or whatever that ratio would be because they know they'll make a lot of money. Yeah, but yeah. Big pharma Stalinism. Yeah, I think there's a case to be made for all these companies. We could kind of, if we bring up all the dirt about any of these companies, like even the Walmart next to my hometown, totally destroyed my home economy. All the small businesses closed, even the minor corporate stores. There's a couple PA, Pennsylvania grocery stores that closed down because of Walmart. Plus hardware stores closed down because of Walmart. because their monopoly power lets them go into hardware, food, clothing. There's an auto shop in the Walmart. So every single industry in a local economy is killed by Walmart, and Walmart gets paid to build in our local areas. So that's one place I like to bring out. American military contractors literally profit from war. Yeah, capitalism by definition leads to death. By the way, thank you to whoever just subscribed. Capitalism, I need that on a t-shirt. Capitalism leads to death. Just really, really low key, walking around at my college campus with that shirt on. Although my college campus is kind of conservative. And by kind of conservative, I mean it's just not 95% liberal, because usually college campuses are, really liberal. A lot of my Ooh, okay.
To actually be worse off economically and statistically, we run the risk of being the first generation in American history to actually be worse off economically than our parents if nothing is done to change the trajectory of this economy. To me, that is not just a concern for our generation.
What is this?
It's a concern that calls on us to build an alliance among generations to try to make sure that the future really is better than the past. And you don't get that by promising to turn back the clock. You get that by finding ways to make change work for us before we're all disrupted out of a good livelihood by it.
Okay, what is this?
Let me introduce you to Tyler Lentz, who recently graduated from business school. He works for a community bank in the Austin suburbs. Tyler?
So there's an altered...
And statistically, we run the risk of being the first generation in American history to actually be worse off economically than our
I'm
parents.
confused. Okay, what's the difference between these videos? There's an original video and an altered video. Oh, adding applause. I didn't even... I'm dumb. I wasn't paying attention.
The trajectory of this economy. To me, that is not just a concern for our generation.
Yeah, I wasn't...
It's a concern
my eyes were
calls
working,
on
not
us
my
to
ears.
build an alliance among generations to try to make sure that the future really is better than the past. And you don't get that by promising to turn back.
Oh, God, I hate that guy so much. As fake as his... Everything about him is so manufactured, it hurts me. It's physical pain, I'm telling you what. Like, oh, is that a new poll out? I haven't seen this poll yet. So apparently a new poll has Buttigieg creeping up on Bernie, which this is the narrative that they're going to be pushing, and it's something that I think we have to be worried about. And I know a lot of people are saying to me like, oh, don't worry about it. Buttigieg is knocking out Biden. That's what we want. But I don't really want that, because a lot of Warren voters are going to go Buttigieg. A lot of Klobuchar supporters are going to go Buttigieg. If Biden knocks down, those voters are also going to go Buttigieg. Like, we might actually be dealing with a Buttigieg surge that'll couple on to the remaining states. And I know South Carolina and other areas that are really dependent on different minority voters is important, but we're talking about this overall delegate count we need to capitalize on. You know what I mean? We have to get as close to that magical number as we can. Although Michael Bloomberg is helping... It's an interesting combination, because down south, Michael Bloomberg is stealing minority voters away from Biden. So Buttigieg doesn't even have a chance to get those. So we just have to keep fighting. It's too complicated. The simple thing to do is just to keep going. And I think Andrew Yang, after what he said today, I think there's a good idea that, well, I do agree that it's an outlier, but all the polls that are coming out recently do show Buttigieg catching up on Sanders. But Andrew Yang today, I'm really happy that he came out and said, basically, in a subliminal way, he's been giving little hints for a while, that he's on Bernie's side. Because I've been debating with myself, like, is Andrew Yang more ideological, or is he more, like, career, opportunistic, centered? And earlier, he said that, basically, it looks like Bernie Sanders won. And we should be really happy about that. I probably retweeted it. I don't know. No one looks at my Twitter anyway. I honestly just retweet stuff if I want to revisit it. Like that, or retweet, but... yeah, the polls, I mean, so far the polls are screwing us this year. Bernie was right on the mark of what the poll said, and... I hate these. But Buttigieg surged in it. But that wasn't picked up from Biden. Yang said Bernie was wrong on the opioid crisis. Bernie supporter, 2 a.m. in the cold. See, I don't know about this. So this Yang supporter is saying he ran into a Bernie supporter at 2 a.m. out in the cold looking for a ride. He was here from Ireland and couldn't use Uber. Hashtag Yang Gang welcomed him to join our group, and we'd call a ride for him from a warm place. A car full of burners then drove by all of us and shouted, F Yang. Like, I hate stories like this because Twitter magnifies it. And literally 99% of Yang's base is on Twitter. Like, I'm guaranteeing 99%. It's the Twitter culture. They could get anything trending as much as Bernie supporters can. But what, Bernie has the offline support as well. But I don't like when they show stories of negativity like this because out of every campaign, compared to Yang, Bernie's is the most similar. The people in it, the coalition, the goals, the overall trajectory, of what they're trying to do, freeing up the government to work for people. Yeah, but I just hate when these things are spread because it gives, just a negative light to a relationship that really shouldn't be negative. And then if Andrew Yang, you love Andrew Yang and Andrew Yang's great, you believe in him, but if he endorses Bernie Sanders, you won't support a socialist. So you think Andrew Yang has all the right answers, except when he supports Bernie because apparently he doesn't have all the right answers. So you do trust him unless if he, I don't know. Weird to me. Yeah, so they added applause to that. Everything is fabricated, and people will like it. There's a reason Michael Bloomberg's catching on. That's why I flame some Yangers. I'm friends with a lot of Yang Gang. Thank you to whoever just subscribed. Yeah, but I'm friends with Yang Gang. It's just, I don't know, dude. There seems to be a disconnect. So this guy's saying, this Yang guy that just posted is saying the results for Iowa are wrong. Hopefully they take Bernie's suggestions. I don't have a list of what Bernie actually showed, the discrepancies. But I want to see if they'll take it because Tom Perez and the DNC announced that they would have to, candidates would have to come out and say if they want a re-canvassed by 1 o'clock tomorrow, or CNN would report results as official, and as if they're decided. Yeah, Yang's whole campaign is off the Bernie model. He started his campaign trying to be a Bernie supporter recruitment force. Okay, we're going to try to mirror Bernie. He actually was quoted to be saying when he first started running, I'm like a younger Bernie. That was his big tagline. People for Bernie tweeted a list. I have to follow them, actually. Yo, how does Twitter even work, dude? I don't even know how to use Twitter, to be honest. I just kind of got it. I'm more informed on Twitter, honestly. All the news is on here with fact-checking. You said they added a list of what the discrepancies were? Yeah, you're going to have to... Oh, here you go. Only 5 of the 6 delegates were awarded. After rounding, Biden received 3, while Sanders and Klobuchar received only 1 each. Sanders' 1.2 is higher than Klobuchar's 1.09, so the last delegate should go to Sanders. Interesting. So Bernie should have 1 extra there, and he was only down by 1 with the official count they put out. Here, Sanders is down 1 delegate as well. So he should be having 1 extra here when you go down to the math. So Bernie has around, counting these 2, that's 4, 5, 6. So he has at least 6 delegates laying out there that will fix. Here's the entire picture, I'm guessing, but here's the. Yeah, so Sanders can win this thing by 5 to 10 delegates, and I want to see if the media actually covers it. It should be 2.5 SD. Yeah, that makes sense once they finally adjust it. But I'm just really curious to see how... I mean, once we get to the weekend, which is when this will be, which might be their strategy. So they timed it to put out the information the night of Pete's town hall to say he's the winner, to give him one last day of positive media coverage. And then Friday, but no, it might work good because the debate's tomorrow, right? Yeah, I don't know. So if Bernie could declare victory, he has to do it early though, because if it's hanging up in the air by the time the debate comes around, people are done talking about this issue. They don't feel like discussing it anymore, so they won't want to talk about our results anymore. The media cycle is exhausted. Yeah, me too. I hope they fix it by the debate. But yeah, that's tonight's amazing news. They wanted to recanvass, and we just, at least we know they're coming for us again. And I hate saying they're coming for us because that's like a right-wing talking point for like being afraid of immigrants. They're coming for us. They're going to steal your jobs and steal your freaking religion, whatever. But they are. The corporations around us are controlling it. But I'm probably going to log off now. So thank you guys for joining me again. If you're not subscribed yet, if anyone's watching that is not, please consider doing so. And I'll probably go live after the debate tomorrow. Probably not before, but definitely after. I'll be on to discuss the results of it. I'll probably do a tier list on here. But yeah, talk to you guys later.